The story of the Ring of Gyges, as told by Plato in the Republic, is one of the most timeless and profound reflections on human nature, power, and morality. In this ancient Greek tale, a humble shepherd named Gyges discovers a magical ring that grants him the power to become invisible. One day, while tending his sheep, an earthquake opens up a fissure in the earth, revealing a hidden tomb. Inside, Gyges finds the skeletal remains of a giant warrior and a mysterious ring on his finger. When he slips the ring onto his own finger, he immediately becomes invisible, a power that offers him complete freedom and anonymity. This newfound ability, however, presents Gyges with a profound moral dilemma. He could use this power to escape from his mundane existence, commit unspeakable acts, and seize power with no fear of consequence. At first, Gyges is likely overwhelmed by the possibilities, but it doesn't take long for him to start exploiting the ring's powers for personal gain. He sneaks into the king's palace, where he takes advantage of the queen, convincing her to help him murder the king and take over the throne. This act of treachery marks the beginning of his dark journey, where the ring's power transforms Gyges from an innocent shepherd into a ruthless ruler, all in the pursuit of wealth, status, and control. In Plato's telling, the story raises critical questions about the nature of morality and human behavior. It explores the idea that when people are no longer bound by the fear of punishment or social consequences, they are tempted to act purely out of self-interest, and their moral compass may crumble. For Plato, the story illustrates the fragile nature of human virtue, suggesting that people follow moral guidelines not out of a true sense of justice, but because they fear the consequences of doing otherwise. In this way, Gyges' tale serves as a cautionary warning about the corrupting influence of power, particularly when that power is obtained without effort, responsibility, or accountability. The more power one acquires without being accountable, the more likely they are to fall into corruption. The message, according to Plato, is that the more power we are granted, the more we must strive to understand and temper our desires and impulses, lest we be consumed by them. From the Stoic perspective, however, the lesson shifts. Stoic philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius would interpret the Ring of Gyges story as a challenge to the very nature of power itself. While Plato is concerned with the morality of actions when people are freed from societal consequences, the Stoics are more concerned with how we can master ourselves and cultivate virtue regardless of the circumstances. Stoicism teaches that true power doesn't come from controlling others or evading punishment, but from controlling our own desires, emotions, and actions. A Stoic, in this case, would recognize that Gyges' first moral misstep wasn't putting on the ring, but rather his thoughts and intentions, before he even knew the consequences of his actions. In other words, the temptation began long before Gyges ever gained the ability to act invisibly. A Stoic would argue that the real test in life is not how we behave when others are watching, but how we behave when we are alone, when there are no consequences, no audience, and no one to hold us accountable. This is where Stoic philosophy finds its deepest wisdom. Virtue is its own reward, and true freedom lies not in the ability to do anything we want without consequence, but in the ability to choose what is right, even when no one is watching. For the Stoic, the act of wearing the ring should not lead to self-indulgence, deceit, or corruption. Instead, it would present an opportunity for personal growth, reflection, and the cultivation of virtue in the face of temptation. The Stoic Gyges would reflect deeply before acting. Rather than using the ring to exploit others or gain personal power, he would consider how he could use his newfound power to benefit his community and improve the lives of others. He might quietly observe situations of injustice or inequality, not with the intent to blackmail or exploit others, but with the aim of guiding them toward justice. He might choose to remain invisible to protect the vulnerable, to right wrongs, and to foster a sense of fairness and balance in the world around him. Where the original Gyges used the ring for self-interest and to satisfy his desires, the Stoic Gyges would use it as a tool for reflection and ethical action. The ring of Gyges, in the context of Stoicism, serves as a metaphor for moments in our own lives where we are faced with opportunities to act without consequences, when no one would know the difference between right and wrong. These are the moments when our true character is tested. Perhaps it's when we could take credit for someone else's work, or when we could steal from a company, or when we could manipulate a situation to our advantage, because no one would be able to trace it back to us. These are the ring of Gyges moments in the modern world, times when we are tempted to take advantage of anonymity or power to further our own interests. The Stoic challenge is to recognize these moments for what they are and to make the right choice, even when no one is watching. In this way, the story teaches us that the real power of the ring is not in the ability to be invisible or act without consequence, but in the ability to choose virtue, even when the temptation to act otherwise is strong. By reflecting on these moments beforehand, by rehearsing our responses, and understanding our potential for temptation, we prepare ourselves to act with integrity, regardless of the situation. This is why Stoic philosophers often emphasize the importance of daily meditation, reflection, and the practice of ethical decision-making in everyday life. By contemplating scenarios, rehearsing ethical responses, and continually refining our sense of virtue, we prepare ourselves for the inevitable moments when we will be tested. Furthermore, the story of Gyges also speaks to the issue of power without merit. In the case of Gyges, his rise to power comes not through his own efforts but by chance. He discovers the ring and uses it to take what he desires. This raises an interesting question about the responsibility we have when power is handed to us without having earned it. The Stoics would argue that the more we receive by fortune or chance, the greater our moral obligation to act virtuously. Power gained by inheritance, luck, or privilege comes with a unique responsibility, not just to society, but to ourselves. How we use such power will determine our character and the legacy we leave behind. Finally, it's essential to understand that the true lesson of the Ring of Gyges story is about accountability, not just to others, but to ourselves. The ring may make Gyges invisible to the world, but it does not make him invisible to his own conscience. In the same way, our actions, even when they are hidden from others, are always visible to ourselves. This is what Socrates and the Stoics understood, that our conscience is the ultimate judge of our actions, and it is to our own character that we are ultimately accountable. The true measure of a person is not how they appear in the eyes of others, but how they hold themselves to their own standards of virtue. In conclusion, The Ring of Gyges is not merely a story about the dangers of power, but a deeper reflection on the nature of choice, morality, and self-control. It forces us to confront the question of what we would do with absolute power and whether we can remain virtuous when we are free from the consequences of our actions. For the Stoic, the true test of power is not in what we can get away with, but in how we choose to use our power to benefit others and to align our actions with virtue. The real power, as the Stoics teach, is the ability to master ourselves, our desires, our impulses, and our choices, regardless of whether anyone is watching. In this way, we become truly free, not by acting without consequences, but by choosing to do what is right, even when no one else would ever know the difference.